Oh, goodness. Ooh, yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dan. I really appreciate it. I know we bounced some dates around, but we're here and we made it. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. That's what matters is we made it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, absolutely. So to start, I know that you're the founder, and I might butcher the name. Sensei, is that how
Sensei.
you say it?
Yeah, Sensei.
Sensei.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
No,
That's
no
cool.
worries.
You're the co-founder of Sensei, and I believe because I've been following you on Facebook or on LinkedIn for a minute, I believe you're a co-founder with your wife. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're definitely going to talk about that. You got a lot of that's really cool. But why don't you give us the rundown of what Sensei does and what you guys are involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sensei, and that was the first business mistake we ever made was what we named the company because it's so hard to pronounce. You have to explain it to everyone, and that's um,
Yeah.
but we focus on teaching people financial systems so they can achieve financial goals. So essentially,
Okay.
we help teach people how to organize and manage their money so they can actually make financial progress, and we do so through online courses and programs.
Okay. Cool. Where and that's really cool, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that, but where did the idea come from? Because it's a pretty popular topic, and I know, you posted earlier today on LinkedIn that a lot of your thoughts were polarizing. Everybody was either like super for you or maybe vehemently against you, right?
Yeah,
But where did the idea Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, great question. So, it honestly came when I got married and we didn't know what we were doing with money. I never went out and intended to create a company like this. It just kind of happened over time. Um, and it happened because my wife and I really fought about money and struggled with money at the beginning of our marriage. And most of that was due to the beliefs and the lack of systems I had in my life around money. So
Mhm.
um, I brought a mentality that all debt was good and that I was going to be rich, massively, overwhelmingly rich someday. And I was not afraid to leverage anything and everything. So I went from, on track to being graduating from my degree debt free to about $20,000 in credit card debt and just taking out student loans. And I was in a couple months, and I was on track to double that every 6 months based off of my habits. And I
Whoa.
had no intention of stopping.
Mm. Wow. That's
So
insane. So
go
what
ahead.
Yeah, oh my goodness. So what happened between, being on track to graduate debt free and then these ideas that like where did the ideas come from that like there was good debt and things like that?
I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a fantastic book. I have nothing bad to say about that book, but I applied it
Mhm.
almost to the extreme because he actually tells people not to, go into stupid debt or whatever.
Yeah.
I also joined you ever seen those signs? If you're in Utah, you drive around, you see those signs that says real estate investor seeks trainee, 10,000.
Oh, yeah, 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 like make 20 grand a month or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was young and curious. I called off one of those signs and got roped into this real estate MLM. And they sell like real estate education. It's very expensive. And I couldn't. The only reason I couldn't get it is because I didn't have enough credit. And so, because it was
Mhm, mhm.
$25. So I
Yeah.
started trying to build credit by essentially going into a lot of debt, which is really stupid.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I brought that mentality and that type of behavior into the marriage, and I didn't want anyone to know that I was actually living a lie. So I was, you know, leveraging everything. I could barely afford groceries. My roommates were probably the only people who actually knew the truth. But I would, not be able to buy food, and then I would go out and tip $100 with a bunch of friends because I wanted them to think that I was rich. Uh,
Okay. Yeah,
so
okay.
So it was, I was kind of messed up as far as my behavior goes when it came to
Yeah,
money.
but sure, sure, sure. And I think we all are. I think everybody starts out with these, ideas, and we follow, some fake financial gurus, You know what I mean? But eventually you start Sensei, and eventually you kind of get back on track. So what was that transition like, and what lessons did you learn, and what lessons were most valuable to you?
Yeah, so I was running another company in college. It was a digital marketing agency, and
Okay.
I wasn't managing those funds very well either. And so I got married, and my wife obviously wanted to know what was happening with her financial situation. And she was working too. And so we didn't talk about money at all before we got married. She just kind of thought I was well off because of how I acted. And so we got into our marriage, and the truth came out. And um, it was just a living nightmare for months. It was just disagreements, anger, frustration. It felt like our new marriage was gonna go away pretty
Uh,
quick. And so I remember one time walking out, slamming the door, and just thinking, is my money mindset or my belief about money and success more important to me than my marriage?
mm,
And if I was really honest with myself, I realized that the answer was that it didn't matter as much as my marriage did. And I would rather be less whatever successful as I wasn't on a path to success, but I thought I was. Um,
yeah.
that it would be better to essentially throw my ideals away in favor of coming to terms with the reality of my situation with my wife.
Yeah, that's a hard situation. That's a hard reality to face. I think that every kind of budding entrepreneur, unless they go through, one of your programs before they, fall into the trap, I think falls into that trap, right? Like I remember mine wasn't Rich Dad Poor Dad, mine was Grant Cardone, and how like don't be like stingy with your money and stuff like that. But you got to be like really smart about it, and you got to realize like you're not in the same spot as these other people, right? Like Robert Kiyosaki or something like that. So it's kind of a weird thing that everybody tends to go through, right?
Yeah, well, it is because if you tend to believe in passive income, if you tend to believe in entrepreneurship or
Sure.
something, you fall into those mindsets, and those are not. Grant Cardone's not a bad person. Robert
Right.
Kiyosaki's not a bad person. Their books are good. They're not. I don't think they're out there intentionally trying to like teach people bad things. It's just how I applied it, how I
Right.
internalized it was the problem, and I took it too far.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, absolutely.
and so, anyway, just to keep going off your question,
Yeah.
um, I still didn't know when I finally said, "All right, I'm not going to do what I have been doing." I didn't know what to do instead, though. So
Sure.
I still didn't know
Yeah.
how to come together with my wife and make a plan we both agreed on. I know I wanted to, but I didn't know how to. I'd heard you hear all these principles. You should budget. You should get out of debt. You should invest passive income. I just didn't know how to do any of those.
Yeah.
So I knew that investing in real estate yielded passive income, but I didn't know how to like make my wife happy along the way to that path. And
Yeah.
sometimes people would say you just ignore that. And then for me, I realized I didn't want that.
Hmm.
I'd
Yeah.
interviewed millionaires who lost their marriages in favor of money, which I'd kind of deduced from speaking with them, and I realized I didn't want that. So we're broke. We still don't have a money plan. We're like better, but we're still, disagreeing about I didn't want to budget. I didn't want to I knew I wanted to be on the same page, but I didn't want to budget. I didn't want to do what I thought essentially was middle class financial habits. And um, we go on a road trip to a friend's wedding, and at that wedding we meet a friend's parents, our friend's parents who were there, and they were successful. They've been married a long time, and we just asked them, how did you guys figure this out? How if we want to be you in 30 years, how did you do this?
Uh-huh.
And they said some things that really resonated. They said, first off, just because you're an adult doesn't mean you know anything about how to manage money. It's something that has to be learned. And we think that because we're adults, we should just know. And that's actually ridiculous because just like
Yeah.
anything else,
Yeah.
it has to be learned. You've had to learn everything else up in your life up until this point, you are not just going to magically know how to manage and budget and work together with somebody else in your finances, whether you're single or
Yeah.
married. You have to learn, you have to test, you have to try. And the third
Yeah.
thing they said was, or the second thing they said was, don't, it's so much easier to figure that out from somebody who's already figured it out than to try to figure that out on your own. Well, I said, well, I've already tried that. I've tried, Robert Kiyosaki. I tried to do what he told me to do. But I realized that that plan may have worked for just me, even though it was I was implementing it wrong. It wasn't going to work for my new situation, my wife, my partnership that I just formed in my marriage. And so we needed something else. And they recommended Dave Ramsey, and I would have rather like thrown up in a, and go to Dave Ramsey because I had taken his class in high school, and I was just some old bald guy talking to me about mortgages.
That's right.
But there wasn't. I said, okay, I'll just listen to it. I'll be open. And at this point, our debt is mounting. We're still in the red every month, and I'm still stressing out. And we listened to that book on that road trip home, his Total Money Makeover book. And
yeah, great book.
Yeah, it is a great book. And I just said, okay. It answered some things for me and for my wife that we both said we're going to do this. And we wrote out our first financial plan on a napkin we had in the car. And we said, all right, it's going to take us 2 years to pay off this 20 grand of debt. Well, we get into this process. We start, and this is maybe more than you're wanting, but I'm telling you anyway.
No, go ahead, man. No, this is perfect.
We get into this process and we start trying to pay off this debt as fast as possible. And through the process, we realize that there's more people who've written about personal finance besides Robert Kiyosaki and besides Dave Ramsey. So we start reading every personal finance book we can get our hands on. We start interviewing more millionaires because we learned from that couple at the wedding. We started, just talking to we went on a journey trying to understand how personal finance really worked. Not business finance, which is totally different.
Different. Yep.
Not, leveraging debt, but how do I emotionally manage money in a relationship for myself so that I can save to invest one day? I don't want to budget just to budget. I want to actually progress. I want to do this in a way that actually works where I can be happy and at peace now while I'm building the future. That's what I wanted. And we started learning from a ton of people, and we started developing systems, and we started working hard. And what we thought was going to take us 2 years, we actually finished in 6 months before we graduated from college. And we're
good for you. Holy cow. Yeah, that's awesome.
And so we were like, wow, this is working. And we decided that we were going to, we wrote a blog article kind of about our experience and just shared it, not thinking anything was going to happen. And it didn't go viral, but it got a lot of attention. And so many people started reaching out to us, and we thought, wow, well, we're not the only ones struggling with this. And we just started teaching people in our living room and one-on-one, and we go to their house and teach them. We started teaching people online in group classes, and then pretty soon we developed a full-on program, which is now the Personal Finance Accelerator, and we've had over 1,000 people go through it.
That's sweet, man. Holy cow. Yeah, there's a lot to kind of unpack in that story, but I really like that. I really like, Dave Ramsey, you brought him up. I think it's funny because I started out in sales, and specifically, we'd run into we call them like Dave Ramseyites or whatever, right? Pay what it weighs and all this kind of stuff, right? And so that really put a bad taste in my mouth. But and this is kind of off topic, but when you start looking at it, you're like, okay, it's actually not that crazy. He's actually got a lot of good points. And one thing that I never missed because I had such a jaded view at first of Dave Ramsey was he actually does talk about hey, once you're out of debt and once you're stable, don't be stingy, right? Do things, have fun. And that's the part that I missed. And anyway, I just thought that was funny. Yeah, it does get lost.
It gets lost. Just like in Kiyosaki's book, he says actually the same thing, but it got lost me in the middle of the passive income, nice lifestyle stuff.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I don't think that was everybody, but it did to me.
No, it did. Well, it did. I think it does to if you're ambitious, like you said you were in a degree, like a business degree. So if you're in that entrepreneurial spirit, you're in that business mindset, I think you really are just like really gung ho. Now, I do want to talk to you. I mean, like we got time, but I do want to talk to you about this idea of, how to manage personal finances and what I did a YouTube video on passive income. But I'm curious before we like talk all about that. Like, what are your ideas on passive? Like, how do you define that? What do you tell people to do? I don't really know your views a lot on that a lot, so I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So the question is basically, what do I think about passive income?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I've thought a lot about passive income because I'm a huge fan, but I define it maybe a little bit differently than what
Okay,
maybe a lot of people think. So passive income in my mind means I don't have to set up a business necessarily to get it, right? So it's like
sure.
I'm an owner of something and it's paying me. I've invested in
Yeah, yeah,
something, I'm
yeah.
being paid out of it. Um, I think that a lot of what people get in real estate, and I'll be careful not to contradict myself here, but when people think passive income, I feel like most of the time they think real estate. And when you are an owner of a real estate property, you essentially own a business because you're renting out that property. It's you may get an
Sure.
automated check, but you still have to do work. And so
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
mind, the pure passive investment is when I just give somebody money and I get a check back once a year with a report. um, I don't have to do anything. If I own an
Sure.
automated
Yeah.
business and I'm completely out of it and have somebody's running everything for me, that can be passive income. But it's different
Okay.
than if I actually own something and I actually have to do work to receive that income.
Mhm.
What I think instead, what most people are actually describing is what I call the passivity ratio, which is
Mhm.
essentially increasing the amount of money that I earn per for per hour without having to
Mhm.
necessarily do any work. So if
Mhm.
I own a rental real estate property with 4 doors and I'm cash flowing 2,500 a month, then and I have to do 2.5 hours of work a month,
Yeah.
then my passivity ratio is really good. And I'm not going to do the mental math on that because I tried earlier today and I failed. So but essentially, you can still do work, but you increase the amount of money you earn per hour without necessary and decrease the amount of time it takes to earn that money. And I think
Yeah.
that people should focus on their passivity ratio rather than this ambiguous anamorphous entity called passive income, which
Mhm.
is can lead you down some roads that don't pay off well. That's my first piece to that. If you want to break that down, we can.
Sure.
Second, I think most people, if you chase passive income, you're often doing so because you want freedom or you don't want to work or you want to just
Mhm.
have it and to be able to do something else that you care about more. In my
Mhm.
experience, and from interviewing so many people and talking to people who have achieved financial freedom, you have to come to a reckoning at some point that that end goal is not meaningful. That just being
Sure.
paid 10 grand a month passively or owning something that does that, at the end of the day, you still have to find meaning somehow. And so
Mhm.
if you are trying to find passive income so you don't have to do things, it often tends to make it so that you don't actually do the things that will yield to even be able to get to that point because it takes work to build passive income streams, like a lot of it. And most passive income that's advertised is not easy. Um,
Yes.
so we hit a point in our business where I didn't have to work anymore,
Okay.
where it was all automated. Somebody else could run everything, and I didn't have to do anything else anymore. And
Of course.
um, I could go do whatever I wanted. And I realized that even at that point, I still wanted to be reaching more people. I still wanted to be building, even though it was covering all of my expenses. I still
Yeah.
cared. And so then I stuck with it. And I still do that because I want to. Um,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
it's important. that instead of waiting till you receive financial freedom or achieve financial freedom, whatever you define that as, that you find meaning and chase meaning now. Because financial freedom, if you're not, it takes a ton of work and a ton of time. And if you don't have meaning along the way, then it's not just going to magically
Mm,
appear once you arrived.
yeah, that's interesting. I like that because a lot of people do think that money is going to solve all their problems, and I'm not the guy who says money doesn't buy happiness, but I am I'm along the same lines as you. Like you got to there has to be something else, right? Something bigger than that.
Absolutely.
And that's what you teach, and that's what I'm assuming then you teach in your financial programs and your financial methods is how to find maybe meaning outside of money while you're someone's getting out of debt or while they're trying to reach their goals.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm a big proponent of what a lot of people would say Dave Ramsey's best known for is I do think people should pay off their debt. I'm okay with business debt. I'm okay with, people using credit cards to get points and things like that. But you've got to
Sure.
be very clear about it. And I think people can get in danger there. But yeah, debt-free 6-month emergency fund, I would recommend that to pretty much everybody.
Yeah,
In my
absolutely.
um, that's besides a mortgage because everyone's like, well, in my house too. No, anything that's appreciating or growing, I'm okay with.
Yeah, 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 you're like, "That's cool, okay."
The the meaning in life and in money. I mean, what we really teach people is if you're budgeting or trying to work on money just for money's sake, then you'll never have enough of it and you'll always be behind because someone else is
Yeah.
always making more money than you. But if you can find meaning, if you can find the thing that you're committed to, whether that's something that you truly, deeply are passionate about, then comparison becomes irrelevant because you're confident in your plan and your direction, and you're finding meaning in that. When I have a plan and I know I'm
Mhm.
getting out of debt with my partner or myself personally, and I know that's what I'm doing and I'm committed to that and I'm finding meaning in that and progression in that, then it doesn't matter
Mhm.
if my friend bought a Tesla because I can be happy for them and still progress down my path.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and everybody's path is different. I think a lot of young people, especially when you talk about money. So, like, yeah, I got my degree in accounting, and my
Mhm.
first little small business for me was like helping small businesses manage their money. And so, finance and sales, like that's my bread and butter. And where I feel like a lot of young people get mixed up is number one, they listen to financial gurus who are talking more about business finance than they are about personal finance, and that's not good. Mixing the two, well, I just think that like if you confuse the two, that's not good. That's a
Yes.
better way of
Yes,
saying it, right?
that's correct.
Because it's totally different.
It
um,
totally is. Yeah. I
yeah, it
mean,
is. Yeah,
leverage in a business thing can make serious sense. No pun
yeah,
intended. Um,
sure, sure, yeah,
but in my personal life, I'm staying away as far from that as possible. And
hmm
um, we like to rationalize. I see this all the time with our clients. We like to rationalize that it's okay. It's not that bad. It's not that much debt. What people don't realize is when you truly become debt free, and
hmm
at least on your personal side, um,
hmm
that you are it allows you to gain skills to manage your money so you can save more money to invest. It reduces risk so you can invest more effectively and efficiently. And it empowers you and catapults you to almost being able to achieve goals beyond that so much faster because you learned how to do something quickly. And
hmm
I think people should get out of debt more for the skills gained and the empowering nature of that of what happens when you can literally look at your finances and not owe anybody any consume be in debt to anybody on the consumer side of
hmm
things.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely. Well, I was gonna say that is really powerful, like to know that, like, hey, you don't have any debt. Um, and I think, and even Dave Ramsey will say like the only debt he's okay with is house debt, and then he even has some specifics around like how you do that or whatever. But no, but that's it is a really powerful thing, and I think people, yeah, I get really fired up about finance because I have seen how people get so confused and then they go on these crazy rants. So like for instance, like what are your thoughts on credit?
Like credit cards specifically, or home equity lines of credit, or
Well, just like okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Let me like your credit score.
oh, Yeah. So I mean, Dave will say you pretty much don't need one.
Sure.
I I think you do. I think
Okay.
I also think that you shouldn't make financial decisions though in the name of building your credit score. So here's one I see all the time that I think is a mistake. People will go out
Mhm.
and finance a car in the name of building credit. Um,
Okay.
and here's why it's the mistake. You don't need it will help. People will tell you, buy this car, finance this car, it'll help you build credit. It will. It's not that
Yeah,
they're lying
sure.
to you, but it's not the way you need to do it. And what happens is people end up buying a bigger or more expensive car than they actually need in the name of we're trying to build credit than if they actually thought about intentionally said, this is the car we really actually need right now. Here's how much it
Sure.
costs. We're gonna buy that and save up for that. And if people thought more intentionally about it, they wouldn't need to go buy the 20 to $30,000 car. They can
Yeah,
buy the
okay.
one that's more realistic for their situation.
Yeah. So you're kind of saying that, and I appreciate that sentiment as well. You're kind of saying like be smart about it. Like you don't need to go finance $100,000 car or like a $50,000 car to build credit, right? There's other
Right.
ways to do that without getting massively in debt.
Right. And if you want to buy a $30,000-$40,000 car because you want it, then do it. But don't do it in the name of credit because you don't need that car singularly to build your credit score. It will
Sure,
help it.
sure.
You don't need it. Here's
No,
how I
absolutely.
and how we taught that. So a credit score really is just a measurement of how you get debt to get more debt. Dave says that, and it's true. Um,
Mhm,
it's just how do you currently use the credit that's available to you,
mhm.
so you can get more. And we we found that people can singularly build their credit score to over 720, over 750 in about even 6 months to about a year just
Sure.
by putting every purchase on a credit card and then paying that off every month.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like bills that you already know you have to pay, you put them on
Yeah.
a credit card and then you build that up. And really, so I worked with credit forever. Like funny
Yeah.
enough, I was a I was a car finance manager, so I was the guy who you went into the office and then did all the finance stuff.
I'm talking about
Um,
you, Dalton.
that's right. No, well, I would tell people that too. I'd be like, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna build my credit," and I'm like, "Well," like I learned though, I got kind of jaded with credit because I
Mhm.
learned I saw the back side of credit, which is like it's just to me, after I got out of that, like I'll never, I build your credit score. I don't have a good credit, but I learned a few things. Like number one, like your once your credit score gets above a certain like once it gets above like 700, it really doesn't matter
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Like the difference between a 720 score and a 900 score is nothing. I could get a 900 score the best rate and a 700 the best rate. So that was the other thing. People just think like the higher your score, the better
right.
something is. I don't know really what, right? Something. Um, but then like credit is this idea that somebody will give you an umbrella. I heard this analogy and I've kept it. I don't know who said it originally or who told me, but credit is this idea that somebody gives you an umbrella when it's sunny and takes it away when it's raining. And and I'm like, I just saw it. I mean, I don't know. It just was like to me, it was um it just turned into a racket. Like I'm not a big conspiracy guy unless we're talking about TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Then
Oh
I'm a
man,
big
yes. Wow, you are you. Yeah. No, I really feel that you're right. That I just I really and it's because people just don't know how it works.
They
If
just
it
don't
once
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, once you know how it works, it's like, oh, I'm gonna get the same mortgage rate if I have we just bought a house. We're
Mhm.
as long as we had above a 730, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
They
Right.
literally couldn't do anything else for us,
Yeah. Yeah.
as far as they told us. Um,
Sure.
and so, it's just understanding, and that's what's so important about financial literacy. That's why that's why I realized that this is what I care about, what I want to do with my life, is because
Mhm.
understanding these things helps you make better decisions that, helps you avoid a lot of pitfalls, helps you avoid the traps that really can set you back. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we don't teach enough about I don't think, we teach enough. Like, I don't think enough good people teach about money. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Because it's also like um, we live in America, and I do think that the little guy can get ahead, but I also think that it's going to be a little harder. You have to be more intentional, to use that phrase you used earlier. You got to be a little more intentional about where your money goes. So let's talk about the rules, your rules around money, your rules
yeah,
around personal finance. And I definitely want people to go look at your course and to look you up. But if there are some like, if there's some non-negotiables that you have about money, what are those?
yeah, non-negotiables around money. Um, for me, it's first off, you have to know what your next goal is,
Sure.
because in my opinion, that is the base of everything else you should be formulating your decisions around. So I'm all for what we've developed in the name of goal-based finance, goal-based
Mhm.
budgeting, goal-based decision making. I don't want to budget. I don't want to sit down and track my finances because it's so boring. But if I know that by doing so I'm actually going somewhere, then
Yeah.
it's a lot more exciting. It's a lot more entertaining. I know
Yeah.
there's a reason to say no to certain things. If it's just because I need to live within my means, I'm not gonna stick with that for 30, 40 years. Who
Yeah.
cares? But if it's wow, I want no debt and I want a 6-month emergency fund so I've got a solid foundation so I can go invest and build wealth. And then I want to
Yeah.
be able to invest $10,000 a year into stocks or crypto or real estate, or whatever that amount is. It
Sure.
all starts with the goal. So if you don't have a singular, clear financial goal, non-negotiable for me.
Cool. And that's important, because people really underestimate goals. They really do.
And maybe like, gosh, do I really need a goal? Why the freak do I need to like pick something? Well, it's because here's why. One is because you already feel that you have to do all these different things already. You already feel that you should be paying off debt. You already feel like you need to be investing. You need to feel like you need a savings fund. You probably need to buy a
Yeah.
car or go buy a house. And there's all these things that you want to do. And what
Yeah.
happens is when you feel like you have to do them all at once, it's overwhelming and exhausting. You end up doing none of them because you're trying to put pennies in like 6 different buckets. So
Yeah.
it provides so much clarity if you can just say, this is what I'm focusing on right now. This is the one thing, and I will build a roadmap of a step-by-step process of how those other goals, all those other goals are going to fit in line. So I know they're
Yeah.
coming. I know I can get to them. But today, all I have to worry about is this. And that provides
Mhm.
so much clarity, so much focus, so much direction. And
Yeah.
we have opinions on what that order should be. But at the end of the day, somebody who picks one goal and goes after it and gets after it and builds a roadmap will outperform the person who's trying to do 2 to 5, 10 every time.
Yeah, that's a common theme that I find with good financial coaches like yourself, or good financial advisors, or whoever, right? Because I was talking to, I don't know if you know Dave Lowell. He's kind of on
Oh yeah, Dave's
LinkedIn.
awesome.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dave. So Dave is a friend of the show. He's been on the podcast before, and he gave, similar advice that you just gave, which is like, almost any plan is better than no plan. You
right.
know, he's like, what do I tell clients to do? Whatever they're gonna do, which I thought was very basic, but very powerful at the same time. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, if you haven't looked at Dave, you should definitely go check him out on LinkedIn for
he's
listeners.
cool.
He's awesome. I 100% agree with that. Sometimes we get tempted to feel like, hey, we've got this specific way. We definitely have a specific method, a specific system that we teach people.
Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely.
I would be stupid to say this is the only way to succeed financially
Yeah, of course.
because it's not. It's not. It's just the way
Yeah,
I
it's
believe
not.
building the most peace that I've seen be replicated consistently across the most amount of people, and that's why I teach it. But if there was a better
Yeah,
way, I would teach that way that I found.
yeah. Yeah. And I think it's cool for, I put this out on Twitter the other day. But I think it's important for people to, you know, follow a few different, favorite financial people, right? Like if your finance is your thing, I would follow a few of them. Because I'm a sales guy. I'm a salesman. I'm a sales coach and a trainer. And one of my favorite quotes is, if you steal from one person, it's plagiarism, but if you steal from 10, it's called research, right? And so that's all I'm saying. Just do research.
Oh,
Just
totally.
start fitting in things that work.
Yeah, I really I think you're wise, and it's not just with finance. You can do that with anything, right? I mean, how many sales
Anything.
coaches and sales trainers are there?
Yeah, dime a
It's
dozen.
um, and then one method that's worked for me on that too is like, okay, pick someone, try to live that, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then you're not stuck with it. You're not married to that person. Like
Right.
you can go
Yeah.
find out somebody else and see what they're doing if there's a better way. Um,
Yeah.
be curious, be open, have strong beliefs when you find something that works, but don't be afraid that you could be wrong and that there's a better way.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such a good point. You're talking about don't be afraid to be wrong, because you have time, and it's just learning. And I really don't feel like you can be wrong if you're trying to better yourself and go down a good path, and you're trying to do it the right way, right? Like, um,
Totally.
a lot of us couldn't be here without some of the mistakes that we made. You know, so for a light example would be like this podcast. Like, dude, so many mistakes have been made
Yeah.
getting to this point, but it's fun. And you lose some people along the way, but you gain some on the way, and it's like, all right. And everybody who's here today is supposed to be here, so it's cool. But I am, I kind of want to talk. One of the things that you want to talk about was achieving goals and your ideas around goal setting. And I'm always fascinated by that. So how can people, um, you know, choose what goals to set, and then if there's like an umbrella plan to get those, like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think that the question, if I'm answering correctly, is how do people choose what goal to set and then how do they achieve them?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm
So
long-winded, but yes.
yeah, I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question. So
You're awesome.
the I've used kind of one question to guide really pretty much every goal I've ever set. And I got it from Gary Keller in the book The One Thing.
Oh, I love
What's
that
the
book. Great book.
what's the one thing that if I did it would make everything else unnecessary or irrelevant? So
Mhm.
um, here's how I set my goals and phrase them. So after I do some deep introspection around that question and think about that, you know, if I'm
Mhm.
stressed about multiple things, list all those things out and then say, all right, what's the one thing that if I did it would make all these things unnecessary or irrelevant or non-stressful? Um, and then find the answer to that thing. And then, okay, it's achieving this. So let me give maybe some more concrete examples.
Sure.
Um, I have let's say I have a side hustle and I have a full-time job and I have a family and I have a couple extra $100 every month and there's things slipping through the cracks. I feel stressed out. I don't feel like I'm succeeding. I feel like I'm falling behind. The car needs to be re-registered. The tires need to be changed. I'm behind on my email. There's other projects. I'm not going to hit my quota if I'm, whatever those things are.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and so in that regard, I have a lack of time is the problem. So, or I have a lack of time, or I've committed to too many things, and that's most of us. It's like impossible to do pretty much everything that's required of us nowadays.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
what are the solutions to that? I can say no to certain things. I can, you know, cut the fat,
Mhm.
get rid of stuff off my plate. Sometimes that's not
Mhm.
possible, and so if that's not possible, then I need to not have to do all these things myself. And so when I was in that situation, I realized that the one thing that I need to do was hire a virtual assistant. And I paid them like 200 to 300 bucks a month. And they started streamlining all my emails to one place. They started scheduling appointments for me. They started, putting things on my calendar. They helped me, just I need you to set something on my calendar so I remember to transfer my old 401k to my Roth IRA, roll it over. I haven't done for two
Yeah,
years. I'm being lazy about it, right?
yeah.
It's and um that has made so much difference and made everything else unnecessary or irrelevant, because now I'm not the one who has to worry and stress about all those things. I now have help, and it costs me $200 to $300 a month, and that's freed up time to then grow my income and do things beyond.
Oh
So,
yeah, absolutely.
so here's another example of that. Right now, Sensei is really poised for growth. We've done a lot of things to get customers, but we're identifying the channels that would be the best for us. So,
Mhm.
what's the one channel that if I pursued it, that would allow all of this other stress about how to get customers would be the most, would make it all unnecessarily relevant to pursue all the other ones. Um,
Mhm. Or
and
easier, or
or
easier to
easier,
pursue.
or
Yeah,
easier. And so
yeah,
it just allows some framework. A lot of the time when we feel confused or not knowing where to go next, it's because we're just experiencing the thoughts. We're not looking at them through any lenses or understanding how to approach them. So the
yeah.
second thing, that after you've made that decision, okay, you're able to answer that question, set a timeline and be very descriptive on how long you'll focus on that. So I'm all for 3-month commitments and 6-month commitments. Let's say I decided that the best thing I could do for Sensei is really dial in my Facebook ads and triple my ad spend. Well,
Mhm.
what happens is you go down that path. It's so easy to see shiny objects like, oh man, that looks easier. That looks like that might have actually, I picked the wrong thing. Maybe I
Yeah,
did, but you don't know until you go down the path. And so it's so helpful to just say, I'm committing to this plan for 3 months or for 6 months, and I'm not going down any other path until I've tried this for 3 to 6 months. And if you are
yeah,
unwilling to do, then that's probably not the thing that you should pick to do.
yeah.
Because no matter
Wow,
what you
that's
pick,
great.
you are going to run into barriers, you're going to run into obstacles. So having that commitment, make sure that you keep going even when it gets tough, and you don't jump to the next shiny thing that looks like it'll be
Right. Yeah, well, you're talking to someone with ADHD. I'm always gonna take the shiny route, man. Come on.
easier.
I'm
You
kidding.
gotta run
No, that's
podcasts.
That's right. No, that's I really like that though. It's true. You just have to commit to something and commit to it because and by the way, that's one of my favorite books. I read The One Thing by Gary Keller a long time ago, and it's something that I reread and I keep going back to because um it's amazing how many problems we have to solve have simple solutions. Like, could you imagine? Like, I got that book and then I read the first sentence and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" I'm like, "This guy's one question, really?" And then I kept reading it because I was like, "This guy's full of crap." But it was like the best question ever. It's like, how do you figure out what to do next? I don't know. What's the one thing that would make everything easier? That's a great question. And
Yeah, if you can answer
ages by.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you're like, all right, it's a no brainer, man. It's a no brainer.
I
And I'm sure you run as like a coach, and a consultant and a trainer. I'm sure you run into that. People telling you it can't be this simple.
Oh, yeah, well, I think sometimes people get into our program and they're like, it's like simply like, duh, like, "Oh, yeah, like, I know." But until you commit to it, until you do it, you don't experience the power. One of my other favorite
Mhm.
quotes from Stephen Covey, Seven Habits, is, "Knowing and not doing is not knowing." Until you've done
Yeah.
it, you don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we need more. In a world where there's so much information, like I get, it's so hard to get off LinkedIn every day, but it's so important
Yeah.
to be doing things and to be committed to something. Because when you commit to a path, you gain skills, you gain perseverance, you gain attributes. One example of that, and then I'll let you ask something if I feel like I'm talking too much,
You're
um,
good.
is when we first started Sensei, we tried to get on as many podcasts as we could, and we didn't. We went on like a couple dozen, and we didn't really get any sales growth from it. Like it wasn't like we got all this flood of customers from going on podcasts.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and now I don't. That could have been us. It could have been the podcast we were on. It's not all podcasts. It's very successful for people, but it wasn't like at the beginning. It didn't work to get us what we were hoping it would.
Sure.
Well, we had committed to that for a time period, and we switched off it. 2 years later, we're looking for partners to help share our free budgeting resources to help share, help get clients because people watch our free
Mhm.
class. They want to talk to us. We book them. And we were able to reach back out to the people we'd been on a podcast with who hadn't gotten us any customers and found out they had an email list of over 100,000 people. They then sent out the class. And then, we made tens of thousands of dollars from that. But the relationship had already been established because we committed to that path. When we had committed to the new path later on, we had developed resources that didn't yield anything originally, but did later on. And so
Oh, yeah.
commitment to a path, to a goal, I would argue, will yield more results and benefits long term, even if it doesn't do what you were hoping it would do in the short term.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a great mindset to have, like no wasted effort. I'm pretty stoic in the way I believe, in the sense that like my grandpa used to say, you are where you're supposed to be. And he was talking about church, but
Yeah,
I took the lesson as I went older, and I was like, oh yeah, like the right where you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. And then you foster those relationships, you you keep networking and things like that, and it pays off. Yeah, like, and by the way, it might have taken them 2 years to get that huge email list,
right,
so you're
right.
like, but who wouldn't do that? It'd be like, hey, we came on your podcast 2 years ago when you were new. I'll tell you, as a podcaster, the people who said yes to me at the beginning, I'm like, the people who say yes to me, period. So many people say no to me. The people who say yes to me, period, always get first dibs, man. They
Yeah,
always get first dibs
no,
because,
that you built a relationship. You felt a trust with them, kind of thing.
mhm.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Well, that's it. And so you're helping people build money, you're helping people get financially free, you're teaching them all the good things. Do you go now? This is something that one of the last things I want to talk about. Do you go into schools? Because I've heard like teaching, like talking in schools like entrepreneurially in schools is a big thing here in Utah.
So I just moved to North Carolina. So I haven't.
Whoa.
I like a month ago,
Oh,
and
okay, cool.
did that because I wanted to try something different.
You should.
There's
North
no,
Carolina is beautiful.
yeah, we've really been impressed with it. There are definitely things about Utah we miss, such as the entrepreneurial community, um,
Yeah.
but really liked it out here so far. Um, have I gone into schools? I think schools are so need all the financial education they can get. I think there's something that I would say to this that people have disagreed and probably would disagree with me saying this, but I've found that financial information education is often most relevant when it can be applied. I had all
All right.
the in high school I had a financial class. I had a mom who
Yeah.
taught me how, sat me down and said, "This is how you budget. Open a bank account. She opened an investment account for me." But I
Right.
wasn't paying taxes. I was earning money and wanting to spend it on my friends. Like until I really became an adult and was on my own, the relevancy of the things that I had learned didn't matter as much. And I would have needed someone basically to sit me down and say, "Hey, you really need to invest this much a month because then by the time you're 30, you're gonna have a couple $100,000." And
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I think just general information in schools, it's not gonna hurt. But unless it's applied, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's tough. You're right though. Yeah, you're right. Because if you think doing your taxes is boring, you should read a textbook on taxes.
Right.
That's even worse. You know what I'm saying? And people go like, "Oh, I wish they would have taught me taxes in high school." You'd have skipped that class. I would have skipped that class too, man. No, you wouldn't have.
It's
You know
a
what I'm saying?
perfect
You know what I
word.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You
no
wouldn't have
high
sat through
schooler is
that.
gonna care about like, all right, I'm not filing
No.
taxes for like, I'm independent
Right.
for the
'Cause
10 years.
to your point, right? There's no relevance, like, I don't have to worry about this for a long time. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's very interesting. So I guess then, because I am really fascinated right now, and have been for a long time, about, like, disrupting the current education system.
Yeah,
There's gotta be something, because
better.
that's a big one, right? Like, we can teach 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds about taxes, but most of the time, if you're 18 and you have one job and you're single, Like that's not a hard tax form to fill out, you know.
Right. Right.
It's a couple questions on H&R Block, and they charge you way too much money and they file it. You know what I mean? So that's interesting though. That just kind of got my wheels turning, but
Well,
I appreciate.
sorry,
Go
keep
ahead.
going.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There are 18-year-olds that or high schoolers that benefit from education information that may have their total wheelhouse changed? Yes,
Mhm.
I'm sure there are. I just my guess is that the majority, and so we should probably still do it. I just like you
Yeah.
said, how do we teach principles that actually stick, that they can apply, that they can get excited, they can begin investing then somehow, that they can see the
Sure.
power
Yeah.
of managing money at that age. And I'm with you. Like I think the key to the changing education is to allow students to experience things more than just necessarily learning about them in a classroom. Which again, I am not a teacher, so I'm not there all the time.
Sure.
And
Sure.
wonderful work, and I'm really grateful for 'em.
Yeah. 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 I get, hey, I get blowback from teachers. I'm like, look, something's got to change. And I've got family who are teachers. I've got a whole side who's in education, but and so we get in talks about that all the time. Probably one of the reasons that I do, but I'm just like, yeah, we got to find a way to disrupt that and make it make it a little more relevant, make it a little more today. Because I heard an interesting statistic as I went down that rabbit hole that like, for digital marketing, like take digital marketing for example, like to get into like for information to get into that digital marketing class, um, it usually takes a certain amount of time. Like it's not like immediate, right? Like if Snapchat comes on the scene tomorrow with something hot and new that's disrupting the space, that's not going to be in the classroom tomorrow.
No,
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It might
no,
take a year. I heard 2 or 3 years. I think that might be a little slow, but it's definitely in that 1 to 2.5. You know what I mean? And then you're done. And then what? And then
and then it
it's
could
like,
be done by then. And same thing, I think, with
yeah,
technology, right?
right,
Um,
right.
one of the things I think this is an interesting conversation we could have probably another 2 hours talking about, but um,
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
the things I think is interesting being in the online education space, because our program is an online course, and
yes. Okay.
is we've gone out and we've started to connect with people who teach things we don't. So
Oh, that's cool.
here's a real estate course, here's a cryptocurrency course, and we've started to like add all these things into one place and almost build a curriculum off of other people's content, and kind of be the gatherer of content that we then sell to people, rather than it has to be a one-stop
Mhm.
shop for all things, because I'm not an
Yeah,
expert in things.
right, right. Well, and I was funny. I was having this conversation the other day as well. Um, that almost kind of goes into this education disruption, and that is, people are so focused on being creators. Um, and the world right now, like right now in the world, we're past the point of data collection. And so I was having this conversation that like so many people are creators and not enough people are curators.
Mhm.
Like that would be an interesting thing
So,
to
so
explore.
expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so you have people creating courses. Like I have a sales course and I have a course that teaches people how to become a virtual assistant if they want to make some money, right? So I have these 2 courses that I've created. So and I
I'm
do a
glad,
podcast. So
I'm glad we used that virtual assistant example earlier. Go check out his course.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, but it's cool though. Like
Yeah,
people, it's a really easy way to make $1,000, and whose life wouldn't change with an extra $1,000 a month, right?
right.
So you have this creator stage, which is amazing, and then I think people could make a lot of money being curators. So curating, that's what a college is. Like, what's an MBA course? That's a curation of principles that school or that accreditation requires you to know. Like it's a curated course
Yeah,
of things
yeah.
that somebody else thinks you need to know. And I
Yep.
think it would be cool. And so what's the difference between Harvard and Southern Utah University? It's
Muscle
who
created.
curated the it's who curated the classes. Like we think that guy's a better curator. And so how do you bring stuff together? And I think the future of social media is going to be
Sure.
curation and not creation.
It's the gathering. Yeah, that's actually
Yeah,
really
yeah.
when I started to experience that, who I gather, the audience that I have gathered. Now I'm
Mhm,
not
mhm.
able to, I've got if I have able to reach 40,000 people are interested in the stuff I'm talking about, like I am now,
Right.
and that just keeps growing, I can start to curate more more content and more programs that I don't have to build and say, "Hey, this is valuable to know in the realm of the things that we're talking about."
Yeah, so as a sales trainer for me, yeah, I don't have any like you go read my book or you take my little course or you say like I don't have anything new, but I've curated this sales process that
Yeah.
I think that has worked for me and that I think is absolutely amazing. So I haven't created a new sales process, but I've curated a better one. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how I pitch it. Like so that people don't think like, yeah, he's just stealing all that stuff. Like I said before, if I steal from
You
one,
you
it's
did
plagiarism.
research. You did
I
research.
just did research, man. So anyway, I thought, yeah, that's fun. It goes to, to kind of what you're doing, you have one course, but then can I curate some other courses? So like when people graduate mine, what can they do next and how can I bring value? I think that's amazing what you're doing there. So um, that's great. And I appreciate your time. I know we're coming up. I don't, you're more than generous with it. It's Friday. I'll give you your weekend for sure. But before we go, please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can grab your course and your information and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Dalton. It's been awesome. I'm most active on LinkedIn, Dan Ockey. And then if you want to see our approach to finances, we do have a free budgeting class, the 4 budgeting mistakes most people make and how to fix them to achieve your goals. That's on our website, www.sensei, CENTSEI, financial.com, www.senseifinancial.com. And that's on our website. I think he'll also include a link directly to it in the show notes.
Yep, that'll be there. Well, thank you so much, boss. I appreciate your time.
Great speaking with you. Really enjoyed it.